good day and good deeds. Welcome to the We Do Good Podcast. I am your host, Charles Dame. I am super lucky today to be joined by my good friend and brother, United States Marine, Purple Heart recipient, Thomas Matteo. Tom was a U.S. Marine Corps Staff Sergeant, served 2 tours in Vietnam, was wounded 6 times in combat, and earned the Purple Heart with 5 stars. But his story just doesn't stop there, right? This guy also served after the battlefield in law enforcement. He's a Leo. This gentleman was a chief of police. He earned a Medal of Valor for heroism, nothing short of what Tom is capable of doing. And this conversation today is going to be about courage, sacrifice, and what it truly means to live a life of service, kind of like the We Do Good way. Tom, welcome to the podcast, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Charles. I really appreciate it, and it's my honor to be.
Yeah, super lucky to get an opportunity to have somebody like you show up and do this thing. So before we get started and really roll into me, tell me a little bit about the young Thomas Matteo before the Marine Corps, before everything else.
You know, I was actually very fortunate, Charlie. My aunt raised me. My mother had passed away when I was very young. My father had left us when I was actually 5 years old, so I was raised by my mother, and then my aunt raised me when she passed away. So I grew up in Miami, and my aunt had hotels and motels in the area. So we became sort of the recipients of the Cuban influx into Miami, moving into the area, and I became very familiar with most of the Cuban families that were coming into our neighborhood.
Did you ever learn how to speak Spanish?
I speak actually 5 languages, but because I spoke Italian, it was easy to learn Spanish, you know. So I became very Spanish oriented. In fact, there was a couple of not real gangs in the sense, but groups of guys, and they were Spanish, and I joined their groups, and they accepted me, the only gringo in the whole group. But yeah, it was unique, and you know, my aunt was a great person. But what was unique about that relationship is that in 1962, the latter part, some of the Cuban kids had come to me and asked me if I wanted to go fight in Cuba. If you remember the Bay of Pigs invasion,
Oh yeah,
the failed invasion that they had, and they said, we're going to go to Cuba and fight. And, you know, like a dumb, young, rebellious man, I said, sure, I'll go with you guys. And I go down to Key West to Big Pine Key, and I joined this encampment, not realizing, today, of course, understanding the system, that it was financed by the CIA. And I joined this group, and we wind up training guerrilla warfare and stuff to go to Cuba. We get on a boat. We're going to go yank this guy. It's in my book, actually, What War Has Raised.
Great book, absolutely amazing.
We get on this boat. We head towards a place called Cabo Ying to pull this colonel out, this defector, and we get about probably halfway there and get shot out from the water and wind up on an island. And being a dumb kid, not realizing that 45 minutes later the Coast Guard's there to get us, not realizing they were monitoring what we were doing. But anyway, I get home and my aunt's really pissed off, and you can imagine.
Absolutely.
My uncle, a Navy veteran from Second World War, tells me, you want to fight communism, join the military. So I joined the Marine Corps.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Was what made you enlist in the Marine Corps?
I think it was the influence of my uncle, either going to throw me out or I had no other choice to eat. So I chose the Marine Corps. I've always was interested in that, and based on my issues in Key West and learning all this guerrilla warfare, you know, it was like a young kid. I was very influenced by it. So I did go in the Marine Corps, but I didn't realize until about 60 years later that I was actually 16 years old when I went in, not 17 years old. But due to the fact the courts had messed up the paperwork when they gave me to my aunt, I wound up in the Marine Corps at 16, not 17.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was it fear at that time? Duty, fear of your uncle or whoever it was pushing you to go?
I don't. To be quite candid with you, I would love to say it was, you know, through patriotism, but it was not that. I think it was a fact that I wanted to get out of the house, and that I felt there was a better cause, and I think the cause was helping my fellow Latin friends in their endeavor with communism. But it wasn't a great sense of the red, white, and blue patriotism, you know, as we would look at it.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I think when I got out of the Marine Corps, I would like to look back and say it was patriotism because, you know, after you do all the things and you accomplish the things you do and you meet the people you meet and get the brothers and sisters that you create through that experience, patriotism just becomes part of who you are when you're a Marine. And at least that's what it is to me.
No doubt.
But I'm kind of the same way. When I left, it was more like, all right, let me get out of this house, and I'm going to get on my own, and I'll show you how great I can become. It leads me to wonder, you know, what was the first real moment that you realized, like, one, that you were slated to go to Vietnam, and then when everything kind of changed when you got there?
You know, the true story is, as you well know, the Marine Corps were the first true elements, you know, as a unit to go into Vietnam, and that was the 9th MEB. We came out of Kaneohe Bay. I was in Delta Company, 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines in Oahu at Kaneohe, and I'm sitting in a pool, as I discussed with you before, with two girls and a bottle of tequila in a lounge chair. I had the lounge chair from the pool in the pool.
As a Marine should.
Of course. And two MPs come up and said, "Who are you with, Marine?" I was a PFC at the time. And I said, "Delta 1-3." He said, "Well, you guys are slated for deployment." And I said, "Okay, I'll see you in the morning." And they go, "No, you're leaving now." I said, "Well, it's either I'm with the two girls or drink the bottle of tequila." So be it. I drank the bottle of tequila and finally got up and left. But we wound up heading towards Da Nang, and we landed in Da Nang on March 8th of 1965.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So when you landed, what would you say, or do you still have today? Do you have some solid, straight memories that kind of let you know, like, hey, I'm in Vietnam?
No doubt. I mean, you know, anticipating combat is unique in its true sense, as you well know. We got off of the landing craft because we got off landing craft, you know, the old Second World War Mike boats. And we landed on the beaches, you know, we're thinking this, that. We didn't even have ammunition. We got off the boats. There were gals there with leis of flowers and bands playing and greeting us and all. And it was like, you know, is this the Marine Corps I know or what? And within 3 weeks, we're out in the field already, you know, trying to hunt down bad guys. But no, it wasn't what I really thought combat would be at that moment. You know, I mean, you're thinking you're getting off a landing craft, you're thinking Tarawa,
Yeah,
Okinawa. You
right.
know, you're
It's like
thinking,
rounds are coming at you,
yeah,
and
no,
the
nothing
bombs are
at all.
blowing up.
Nothing to that sense. Nothing at all. It was unique. It was it was sort of, I don't know how I could put it to you. It was like a sense of tranquility that comes over you. You know, you get out of the boat and you see a bunch of people smiling and bands playing. You know, you're not expecting that. You know, it was
Yeah, you were like, I'm safe right now,
yeah
kind
for
of.
that
Yeah,
moment.
which you
Sure.
were definitely not expecting when you get
No,
off the
by
bird.
no means.
Yeah, absolutely. So after after six, and I'm understanding you were shot more than six times, but you got six Purple Hearts. After six,
Yeah.
what keeps you going after two, after three?
You know, I tell this story, Charles, to a lot of people, and I usually say this in sort of the pre-statement to any speech I would give. Everybody wants to know, does this guy know how to duck? And I tell people, I do. I surely do. Believe me. Trust me. Uh, no, really, I do. The issue is that I kept hearing somebody. You know, I always led from the front. I was fortunate always to be either a squad leader or infantry platoon leader, always in a position where I had a lead. So I led from the front, and I kept hearing somebody tell me, "Stand up." I kept standing up. And 55 years later, my battalion commander from back then, who I served with again in 68 and 69, Colonel Hayes, Len C. Hayes, Len told me, he goes, "Stormy, I was telling you to shut up, not to stand up." And, you know, that's the only excuse I have. I think the real thing is that uh, leading from the front, I would never ask a Marine to do something I
Yeah, that
wouldn't
you
do.
wouldn't do. That's
And I
absolutely
think
right. That's how you lead.
any Marine would have that same philosophy. And I led by that and I believe that. And I was fortunate to have broken in a lot of good Marines. I actually had Chesty Puller's son was in my unit
No kidding.
before
Chesty
Lewis.
Puller,
Yeah,
5
his
times
son,
on the chest.
Lewis Jr., was wounded and lost both legs, a hand, and an eye. And
Wow.
50 years later, he committed suicide. But, you know, I mean, so I was fortunate to have a lot of lieutenants that I broke in. God being, I don't know any that are cursing me today, but most of them will tell you that, you know, they're here today because of, you know, me being able to have that capability to lead. And the Marine Corps trained me right. You know, it's the only thing I can say, really, you know.
Yeah, the Marine Corps training is something that none of us ever forget. We live with it for the rest of our lives, and I can tell you, I feel fortunate that I'm able to have that still with me. Um, something I've experienced different types of pain, knees cut open through concertina wire, having to deal with stuff, when you're battling or going through whatever it is you're going through. I have no idea what it would be like to receive rounds and then continue to go. So my question is in that fog of war at that time, if you don't mind taking me back to it, what is it like to try to get through those moments when you know you're hit and you've got to persevere and keep going and come home?
To be very candid with you, I think what happens, at least to me, um, being wounded. I mean, I was wounded quite a few times severely. Being wounded, I think you get pissed off. You just say, you know what? I'm not going out like this. If I'm going to go out, I'm going to do everything I can to fight, and I'm going to give as much I can to survive. It's the guy next to you. You know, the red, white, and blue patriotism thought that we have as Americans is great. It's wonderful, and I admire that. But as soon as that first round goes over your head, it's over, buddy. It's the guy next to you and you. And I think that everything that we do when we're in that situation when we're wounded, in my book, you'll read some of the episodes and things that occurred. I mean,
Where can I get that book, by the way?
that book is on Amazon. It's available. It's on XD. It's going into the Marine Corps PXs, and we're going to put it some other places. I didn't write the book, Charles, to, if you know anything about marketing with Amazon, the royalties are nothing. I mean, there's nothing there. They make the money theoretically. I wrote it because I wanted other Marines to understand that I understood what happened and try to explain for them. It took me 55 years to write it, and it took the daughter of a Marine Corps captain who was killed up by Quan Tree, Captain Oliver. His daughter came to me when I was the president of the 2nd Battalion, 1st Marine Association, and asked me how her father died. And my wife Angela, God bless her, she's my strength. She told me, Tommy, you need to tell her. And I said, no, I don't have that right. She goes, no, you have that right. You have that responsibility. You have to be his voice. He's not there. I mean, what do you tell a girl that never met her father?
Right.
Her mother was pregnant. How her father died. The guy took 2 rounds to his larynx. He was dead, right then and there. I mean, there was nothing left of his throat. Half his head was gone. You can't tell a child that. You can't tell somebody
No.
that. At least I didn't think I should. So I procrastinated for years and years, started writing the book, and Angie really pushed me towards it, and I think it was a healing factor for me, but not so much me. If you read the comments from the Vietnam veterans who I served with that have read the book, it's a testimony of what they went through. And I think it's important that people understand that war is not something that you look at with a sense of a smile. War is hell, and I'm an advocate against war, but then I understand that we must have them to create peace. I hate to say it, but it's the truth.
Yeah,
Um,
when the time comes, don't tie hands,
no, you
right?
can't. I mean, rules of engagement are, as we spoke earlier. I mean, in Vietnam, as an infantry platoon leader, I could get on the horn and request fixed wing or anything I needed, the New Jersey or anybody else, to come in and level the village. In my book, I articulate a incident where we went in with a med cap, where we'd go into a village and doctors would go in there and we'd protect them in a security element. And as we left, we'd get ambushed. I'd lose 2 or 3 men for booby traps that they set. And I'd call in New Jersey and level the whole village. And we'd kill everybody in the village. I mean, does that make sense? No, it doesn't. But it's war. And war doesn't make sense sometimes. It's a shame.
Yeah, war does not make sense. We had some silly ROEs. We were in Mogadishu. I remember it came down. We were no longer allowed to have a round in the chamber or a magazine in our weapon. And they were like, all right, now we're going to head out and do some patrols and inside of
Ludicrous.
Mogadishu. And, Colonel Beavers was like, yeah, he just gave everybody the signal,
Oh,
like
of
lock and
course.
load. Like we're not going in here with these stupid
No, I
ideas.
mean, you're talking about, if you or politicians need to go to war. They need to stand on the front line. They need to have rounds going over their head. They need to have mortars dump on them. They need to pay the price and watch somebody that they love or care about bleed next to them. so they understand what goes on. To set when I hear people setting parameters to fight in war, there are none. What parameters? I mean, war is war, and that's as simple as that.
That's
It's a
it.
shame you have to take that philosophy, but if you want to come home, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, if you want to win, it's got to be
Yeah,
like that.
you have to.
That brings me. We talked a little bit about it a couple times in passing, and I think I've said welcome home to you a few times, but I've also said thank you for you and all the other Vietnam vets that paved the way for all of us young bucks, because all of us young guys came back to a completely different story. Than when you came back to. I remember minus my personal story. I came back. No wife and kids didn't show up for the party, but there was an American flag. There was a parade. There was it was like, hey, welcome home. Um, that's not what it was like for you and the boys that came back from Vietnam. So if you don't mind, can you share a little bit about that experience, because I think people need to know what you all went through, because without you all, those of us today would not be receiving the hero's welcome that we get.
I think that not only because of the ground fighting troops, I think also the physicians, the nurses, and all of the other elements that were involved. I think if you look at surgical procedures today in trauma units, you talk to any doctor and they'll come back and tell you their training came back from guys that were surgical guys in Vietnam. I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about, a history of value there. Coming back was unique. 65 and 60, when I came back in 66, it wasn't too bad. I went to Paris Island. I started teaching weapons training and defensive tactics, air combat training.
MCP. All right.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that. And I played on the Marine Corps football team, and I was chosen to play at Quantico as a quarterback. And I said, no, I'm going back to Vietnam. So I went back. But coming back in 68 and 69 was unique. I mean, I pulled up on an aircraft at Travis Air Force Base and went out to the gate. And as you well know, to travel on orders, you have to be in uniform.
Yeah.
So, but they told us not to wear uniform. So, how the hell are you going to do that? So I go out the gate and some taxi cab driver tells me, come on, son, I'll give you a lift. Where are you going? I said, I'm going to the airport, sir. He goes, no, you're not. You're coming with me. So the guy took me to a bar with a bunch of old Second World War veterans. And we sat there and chatted. So me coming home, I was sort of like receptive as one of them. And I was treated with a sense of decency. But there were people at the gate with signs, with wooden rifles, with dolls on it, with ketchup, baby killers, and things of this nature. And it was funny because when I came home, I sat in the back of the aircraft because I sort of felt, I don't know, like not attached to society. And plus, the stewardesses and the liquor were towards the back of the aircraft. But I mean, I sat back there and in uniform. And when I got back to Miami, my aunt was there to receive me. And I was the last one off the aircraft, Charlie. And when I came off, I expected nothing but negativity. All I saw was my aunt and this elder gentleman. And I didn't know the man. My aunt says, oh, this man's waiting for his son also. And I said, really? I said, was he in the Marine Corps? He goes, no, he's in the Army. I said, oh, okay. Uh, but I didn't see him on the plane. He goes, no, he's here. I said, okay. So we sat and chatted for a few moments, and no one else came off the aircraft. And I saw the old guy go to the window looking at the tarmac, and his son was being pulled off in a casket. Yeah. But he had the strength to welcome me, hug me, and be able to do that. And then I realized, you know what? Regardless of how people are protesting, and they took the war against the veterans, which to me was ludicrous because we're fighting a war to live, survive. We're not fighting a war because of political reasons.
Right.
We're sent there. We're fighting a war based on what we're told to do.
It's our brother and sister. We're fighting for the person to the left and the right of us.
Exactly. And people lose that perspective. They lose that factor. And I think today, even when I see things going on, protesting the things that are going on, it attacks the integrity of the veteran, of the warrior. And that's not a good thing. It's not a healthy thing for them. Look at the consequences over all these years that we've paid from veterans who suffered from not being accepted back into society for what they thought they were doing right.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah, I do all the time, and that's that was one of the things I wanted to say and think about was, the adjustment. the adjustment coming back. I know it's taken me decades. I still need adjusting at times. There's dreams, smells, sights, sounds,
Sure.
things that happen. You can explain them to a million people a million different ways, but if they haven't done it or get it or picked up that rifle and gone to that front line, they don't understand what a trigger really is on that type of a thing.
Yeah.
What type of things did you find, or maybe even still find, that you have to adjust to now that you're home?
I was fortunate, Charlie. In 2001, I made a decision that I was going to go back to Vietnam. It
No
was a
shit.
difficult decision, but at the time, I was in a position to where I had become an expert in Homeland Security, and I was doing some things for U.S. Customs and things of that nature. So I was going to go to the ports. I went to India and China and numerous locations, and one of the ports were going to be Vietnam. But I made a point of taking time out of that to go back to where I fought. Same ground, same villages, same places. I went back into villages. I found people that were there when they were young. I actually found the gal. I'll show you some pictures that we had blew her arm off in an ambush when she was leading a company of NVA into one of our ambushes at night, leading them through our lines. And met her and her grandchildren and took them to lunch and chatted with them. No animosity, no negativity. It was like, look, you fought your war. We understand you. They understood us. And it was good for me because it gave me a different perspective on how to look at the war. When I came back, I tried to preach that to a lot of the veterans, my brothers that came back. It was difficult. It was difficult because, when I came back, the first thing I did, I took a test at the City of Miami Police Department to become a police officer. There were 1,700 applicants. And I'm not the brightest light bulb on the Christmas tree. I got an 87 on the test. Because I was service connected from wounds, they gave me 10%. So I had a 97, so I got a job. And I think it just kept me right back into that mental state, that adrenaline rush, that combat mode, that fighting, mentality. And I did that for years and years and years, and it kept me well. And when I left law enforcement, uh, I went to a company and I ran a company of 5,000 employees in the risk management and human resources. And I tried to adjust to that civilian type of mentality. And I still, yeah, no, really. I
I'm
hate to
with
say
you.
it that way, but
I'm
you
with
know,
you.
but I found myself having difficulty with that. So my wife at the time, Angela, God bless her, 25 years now, Angie said, Tommy, you know, why don't you talk to somebody? And I started having some issues with Agent Orange related illnesses. And so the doctor said to me, anybody been wounded 6 times, you have to have some residual issues of post traumatic stress. I said, look, I mean, I've been successful my entire life. I was the youngest staff NCO the Marine Corps had in Vietnam. Uh, I became a police chief within 6 years of my tenure. I'm senior vice president of a 5,000 employee company. Nothing wrong with me. He said, no, but seriously, talk to somebody. So I did. And I didn't realize that how traumatically and how deeply I was suffering from post traumatic stress. And was fortunate that I was able to find other things to take me out of that realm where a lot of veterans don't. They're found themselves into situations where they become homeless or they become drug addicted or whatever. And I started drinking and I did all those crazy things. I did all that. But I realized that there's so much more to what's going on. And that's why I got involved in so many programs trying to help veterans
Did you
who are
ever
post
do
traumatic.
did you ever do anything along the line of like horse equine therapy, things along those lines, where
Actually, a dear
you met
friend of
with
mine in the
horse
community.
equine?
Yeah,
Because
dear,
that's a new program that We Do Good has going, is equine
it's a good
therapy.
program.
It's been, yeah.
A dear friend of mine started actually a program of this nature about 7, 8 years ago. Lieutenant General Frank Labuti.
Hoorah.
Yeah,
So I think he goes to the VA in, well, I won't say, but anyway.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Frank and
know
I
who
are
you're
very
talking
dear
about.
friends.
Good motivator.
He's a great
Absolutely.
guy. Frank had started a program, and I think what happened was the infrastructure within it was not Frank, it was the participants with the horses and other things that created a nightmare. But yeah, I'm familiar with the program. In fact, if you go to a video that's on many media platforms, I gave you a brochure actually. It's called Wounded Heroes. Wounded Heroes clearly opens up that realm that you're talking about, where the equine. I mean, it's a great program. It's helped so many veterans. I mean, I don't know how many I can say that I know personally, but quite a few. I think it's an outstanding program. I think it's a viable program, and I hope the VA would look at it with more value.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The equine program does have what I've started reaching out to them about the program we started, guess about 2 or 3 months ago now. We have like 5 different sessions that we bring the vets through. And we're doing it with the Retired Racehorse Project. So what we're doing is taking racehorses that have been injured or whatever else, they can no longer do their trade. They can't run. So we're training them to be with the pointy end. So the pointy end of the spear of the racehorse world is meeting the pointy end of the spear of the veteran first responder world. And I can tell you my 5 sessions, I'm getting ready to graduate on April 12th. My 5 sessions have been absolutely unbelievable. I got more out of equine work, horse center wellness work than I got out of, I mean, some of my therapy was pretty good, but this was life changing. It made a huge difference to me to be able to go through the program.
No doubt. I would, make a suggestion to your listeners to go to Wounded Heroes. It's on many media platforms, and it clearly articulates and shows programs that you're speaking about that have been so successful throughout the whole United States. I think it's a great program. I think everybody should look at that in the community. The problem is that, it's a dynamic program. It's costly. It's not something, you have to feed a horse, right?
You got to raise money to be able to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got an event on April 18th specifically to do that, to raise money for our equine therapy program that we're doing, the Horse Center Wellness Program, and it's something that it'll make a big difference for the community to be able to have that right here locally.
Please let me know if I can help. I'd be more than glad to.
Well, I not only can you help, I was gonna invite you after the show, but now that it came up, I've got a ticket for you and your wife and a table I'd love you all to sit at,
Thank you.
and yeah, come be my guest at the
much.
event, and yeah, absolutely. Plus, I think people would love to hear, and now that we're kind of on this subject, and I'd love for you to talk more about it. You got a really cool movie coming out about your life, and I think you should talk a little bit about it and explain it if you don't mind, so people can go see it when it airs.
I was very fortunate years ago. A dear friend of mine wrote a song. It's called Wounded Warrior, and the gentleman by the name of Billy Dean, a four-time award-winning singer, sang the song for us. His father was a Second World War veteran, and he sang the song and used his voice for us. And a movie producer in Hollywood by the name of Michael Geyer heard the song and became interested in it. His father was a Marine, actually, in the Second World War. And he contacted me over about 12 years ago. And we started chatting, and then we started writing a script. And the movie's not just about Thomas Matteo. I'm the main character in the movie because I'm a character, as you will know.
Stormy.
Matteo. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to tell you how I got the nickname because the statute of limitations still might not be there. But we worked on it, and we gave it to someone to write the book as a ghostwriter. They wrote the book. Wrote the movie, the script, and we were fortunate. And we had a choice. We had a choice to give it to Hollywood, which they wanted, but we wouldn't give it to them. They wanted to change the true sense of the movie. They wanted to change the meaning of it. They wanted to change what it really meant, and we didn't want that. We wanted veterans to know that we're here showing what they're going through. And it's about Stormy Matteo, a Marine veteran, staff NCO in the Marine Corps, comes home, and his son goes to Afghanistan. He's in the Marines. And he comes home with a lot of issues. And it's a movie about post-traumatic stress. It's not about heroes, not about fighting. There's some war scenes in there taken from actually events in my book. But it's about helping. It's about healing. It's about equine programs. It's about everything you can think of that would help veterans. It's a great movie to be able to help people with their post-traumatic stress, regardless of where they're at or how they're at, in their life with the program.
About doing good.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing that we wanted to. So what we did, we said, you know what? How did the Vietnam Wall get built? It wasn't given to us. The government didn't build that wall. You know that, don't you?
I'm not familiar with exactly how it was built.
They gave the land. American veterans, Vietnam veterans and their families donated to build that wall. That wall was built by donations. And that's why it's so significant to so many Vietnam veterans, because it was built by
Man,
our
I
own
just went
blood.
there recently, and now I just got goosebumps.
Yeah, I've got
I didn't even know
247
that.
friends of mine on that wall.
Wow.
But so veterans built it. Their families built it, people who cared. So I told Mike, I said, look, Hollywood we don't want involved in the movie. The money's there. They want to put it there. Let's do it by donation. So we got involved with DDS for Vets, and we take donations for the movie, and we're putting the movie together, and it's getting there. It's getting there. I just had a gentleman, him and his daughter, Valentina Chen, and Ben Chen donated $15,000 to the project.
Let's go.
Yeah, super guy. So
Well, I'd like to I didn't even know that was going on. So I'm going to let you know right now. We do good would like to donate $1,000 towards your
well,
project.
thank you so very much.
And we'll make sure that happens. If it could be more, it would be.
Thank you.
But absolutely.
There's a brochure that I
absolutely.
left, for you, and I want to let people know that because of my brotherhood with my Marine brother, and because of his efforts in the community, I feel so blessed to be able to give him a picture signed by President Trump with me at the White House.
It was so awesome, and we'll put it up so everybody could see it in the
Super.
podcast. Like right now, you'll
Super.
actually be looking at the picture.
Super.
I was so off. It was so awesome to get that in honor.
I wanted you to have that, brother.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. And, DDS for Vets really does a lot. We produce, I'm not on their board, I'm just a mouthpiece for them. And we produce service dogs for veterans. And it's a great event every year. We have it at Hutchinson Island. And we just keep attacking. And that's my motto, Charlie, as I've always told you.
I've seen quite a few texts come across my feed, and it says, "Keep attacking, Charlie."
You have to. And the worst thing is that when you get deeper into the mud and things are tougher, you got to get tougher and attack more and more. That's the name of the game. I mean, as you well know, I have 2 prosthetic knees, 2 prosthetic hips. I mean, I can go on and on for a week. And, President Trump looked at me and said, but you look fantastic. Sometimes I wish I could feel fantastic.
Yeah, you aren't kidding. After a life of service and the things that you have done, what does doing good for others mean to you now?
From other people you're speaking in reference to, like what they do, or with me?
You. What does doing good mean for you at this point in life?
I think, Charlie, I have 7 children. I have 15 grandchildren and 17 great grandchildren. I could sit here and talk about everything I do is for them. That's not true. Of course, they're part of my life. I have a 16-year-old son, and from the inception of that child, I've been involved with the community with young children, trying to educate them and let them understand what service is to the community, whether it be in the military, whether it be in service. I speak with all of the junior RTC programs. I'm involved with all of them. I try to give as much as my knowledge as I can. A young boy came to my house to have dinner with my son, and he said, I want to join the Marines. I want to be on the front lines. And I looked at him. I said, son, why do you want to do that? And he goes, because they're the best. I said, no, I know that, but why do you want to do that? Well, sir, I want to be on the front. I said, why don't you think about education? Why don't you think about moving yourself towards other goals? Good, you want to join the Marine Corps. I applaud you for that, but think about what you really want to do with your career, with your life. And he goes, well, I never thought of that. So I said, let's talk about this. And I think what's important to me is that I continue giving to our community in every way that I can, whether it be with any organization, whether it's an opportunity to speak my words, whether it's to be able to help a child. It was funny because at your last event, which I thank you for having me.
The We Do Good 5K. That was, man, your speech was.
Thank you.
I can't even begin to tell. Those of you, if you get to catch it on the internet or something and get to see it, what he said and how he spoke, it was absolutely, it was amazing.
Thank you.
I'll never forget it. So thank you for doing it, brother.
What was unique is that I didn't No, your son.
No,
I
you
didn't know him.
Had
But
no idea.
after I spoke, he stood next to me. And he was standing next to me. And I could sense his presence and I could sense his being. And I said, "How are you today, son?" He said, "I'm doing fine, sir." He was very, polite. And I said, "You having a good time?" He goes, "Yes, sir." And he says, "Thank you for being here." And I don't know why, because I usually don't carry them in my pocket, but I had one Purple Heart coin in my pocket. And I reached it, for some reason, I reached in my pocket. I don't know why. I didn't even know I had it there. And I pulled out the coin and I gave it to the young
God's
man.
good.
And then later on, when I saw him with you, I said, "Wait a minute, are you Charlie's son?" He goes, "Yes, sir." I said, "Oh, okay." But I didn't know that. But he was so respectful and so endearing. After I gave the speech, he came over. I guess he sensed some value in the speech or something about it.
It's amazing how, and I think it happens when our kids of people that have been to the pointy end, have done our country's work. When we raise our kids and we're in a good frame and we're able to pass on to them what service really is. Like I just heard you talking about, how you pass it on to generations. I've been fortunate to be able to pass that on to my son, and I think he knows how to respect and appreciate what service is and what you did for our country, because I know I did. And then on a lighter note, I do have to say it kind of bummed me out that now and he turns to be 18, he's gonna coin me at a bar, and I'm not gonna have something that beats the Purple Heart. I'm gonna have to buy him a beer.
Well, I all I can say is you raised a good young man, and I appreciate
Thank
his
you.
sense of value for, what I said. And I told my wife when I got home, I said, I was amazed this young man was standing next. I explained to Angela the situation. My wife's a mental health therapist, so she's constantly analyzing me, of course.
Has that helped?
Angie doesn't take her profession like sit down, let me counsel you type mentality.
Right, get on the
I'm going to
couch.
give you a for instance, and this
Okay.
is a good analogy. I have a habit, and not because I love war movies or I love death or I love anything else. One morning, I wake up. It was like 3 in the morning. I wake up constantly, and I go and turn the TV on. Sure as hell, Full Metal Jacket's playing. So Angela, as well as the counselors and everybody has always told me stop watching war movies and stuff. So she comes out, and the first thing I say is, it was. She doesn't say anything. I said the movie was on. I didn't turn it on. She goes, okay. She sat down next to me. The movie's playing. She said nothing. The movie's playing. She said nothing. The movie continued to play. She said nothing. I turned the movie on. So let's go to bed. That's how she counsels me. She doesn't use her training or anything else, but she did use her training.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it at the time until days later. What she did was just, instead of badgering me, beating me up, or telling me, she just sat there and allowed me to digest what was going on. So, yeah, she does use her therapy, and I'm proud to say that I'm glad she does. Because, I mean, really, to be frank with you, when you get to be my age, you get a little bit of hard headed and you don't look at things in the true perspective as you should. Uh, but I think with her background and her energy and the way she looks at it, and she loves my veterans, and my veterans all love her. I mean, all my guys know her, and I mean, she's met guys that I served with in Vietnam. She hears stories and she just shakes her head. She just wonders how I'm still here. But um, I think it's important that everybody have somebody, not have to be a mental health therapist, but somebody that understands what they're going through. Because it's easy for us to find ourselves in this big whirlwind of thoughts and mentality and feelings and emotions,
Yeah, the
and
quagmire, the
yeah,
fog of war.
yeah, and not be able to express it to anyone. You and I can sit down and communicate to each other and understand each other,
Absolutely.
no doubt. But sit down with your wife and try to explain it to her. It's a whole different process.
Absolutely.
So, but I'm fortunate that Angie understands that, and she's been receptive to everything. I mean, in the last year, I've lost. God, Charlie, I keep telling people this, and I hate to say it again, but As an infantry platoon leader, I understand I'm going to lose Marines in combat. That's what we do in war.
Right.
We lose them. We don't like it, but we're going to lose them, and we have to accept that. But to come home 55 years later and to lose veterans to Agent Orange related herbicide exposures and suicide and things of that nature, to me, that's unacceptable, Charlie.
Right.
That's why I fight every day to try to communicate, try to get people to understand, and try to get people in the system and try to benefit from that because, you know, it's wrong. People need to enjoy their lives. I've just figured out in my life in the last probably 10 years that I need to enjoy my life, and I'm going to do it and do the things that I want to do. And I think one of them is continuing to help my veterans. When you're leading from the front, you got to lead from the front till you die, buddy. I hate to say it. That's the way it is.
And you're doing it. And I heard you use the word try over and over again. You're not trying, brother. You're succeeding. There's absolutely no doubt in my time knowing you and what I've been blessed to be able to watch you do, see, everything else. You're just a good man doing good deeds on a constant basis, and you're always trying to level other people up, even if that means that they got to stand on your shoulders. You're more than happy to help them get up there. So that's a beautiful place to be at and a beautiful person to be. I want you to kind of final out with what is it you want to say? What's kind of a message you want to get out there or anything you want to put out that you want people to know about or a message you want to leave to people or anything along those lines?
I think the one thing that I would want to say to listeners and to the community is that they need to understand something, that no human being can go to war and come back the same way they were. If they do, there's something wrong with them. There is something wrong with them at that point. No human being could watch fellow service members, warriors, go through what they go through and the traumas that they suffer without having some residual issues. Uh, Try to understand post-traumatic stress. If you look at the true post-traumatic stress dialogue, you will see that majority of the people that suffer from post-traumatic stress are less apt to hurt somebody else than they are themselves. People have this misconception. Many years ago, I think you remember they used the term postal.
Right, they're going postal.
Yeah, people going postal. Look at the statistical data of active shooters, of people doing crazy things. You don't see post-traumatic stress people doing that. They'll hurt themselves first. Understand that they're human beings, that they suffered a trauma, a wound to their brain. That's all it is. It's no more than, and when I was in Washington, I had the capability to sit with Secretary Doug Collins for about 2 hours.
What a great dude. I met him at Mar-a-Lago, and he was so cool. He took a video with me, sorry for interrupting, and sent it to my wife. What a good man.
Yeah, very good. We chatted. He asked me. Also, Dr. Paul Lawrence, I met with him. We sat and we chatted. And he asked me, what do you think we need to do? And I said, the basic thing is understand. Understand that, we can put a name to this illness. And I hate using the word post-traumatic stress disorder. What does disorder mean? Something out of place. I'm not out of place.
No.
Nor is any other veteran that suffers from post-traumatic stress. Understand that there are issues that every day, they don't only fight just the common things that we deal with every day. They fight with traumas from the war. And try to understand them. And I would hope the community would stand up and say, you know what? These are human beings. These people gave their lives. They gave sacrifice. They gave countless days, as you well know, away from their families. Understand them, respect them, and try to give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, that's what I would hope our community would be. And I would hope that, like I said before, you can go up and see the video Wounded Heroes on any media platform that's out there right now. And then the movie is called Wounded Heroes also, and that'll be coming out. I gave you a brochure. And, hopefully it will enlighten people, and hopefully it's going to save some lives, and that's the whole bottom line. I just want to see our veterans live peacefully, what they deserve. That's all they deserve, to live peacefully. They gave great service, no different than the Second World War veterans, no different than the Korean veterans. It's just that people took the war against us instead of the politicians who started it.
Yeah, that's for
That's the
sure.
problem. But thank you for your time here. I appreciate being here. I'm here for you. Anything I can ever do to help your organization, I'm very proud to be part of it. Thank you.
I, Tom, just thank you so much for coming out and doing this with me, and I'm so lucky to get to know you and call you brother and friend, and we will be doing plenty of other things together. Our sons also are very very similar in age, so we probably need to get them together and let them kick it a little bit. Take our wives out to dinner and have a nice night. Let them bond. But so for everybody out there, thanks a lot for joining me on the We Do Good podcast. Remember, do good deeds for others. Make sure that you can pass forward whatever kindness you can in the future to other people. If they need to step on your shoulders in order to get up, let them get on board, because there's nothing better than doing good deeds for others. My name is Charles Dame, and we'll catch you next time on the We Do Good podcast.